Hi everyone, Ralph McFall from Dharma Publishing here. This is the fourth installment in our little series on alternatives to stories. So we've been talking about different ways we can think about our experience or the way our lives unfold that on the surface might seem abstract or impersonal, but that could be liberating or give us a kind of room, that we don't have when we think of things in our ordinary way. So today I want to tackle what is certainly the most complex of the four topics and talk a little bit about the time, space, and knowledge vision. And this is a topic that does really strike people as abstract. And TSK, as we call it, is like a way of open inquiry that looks at the manifestation of appearances as the operations of space-time and knowledge, or space-time and knowingness. And it's quite a challenging inquiry. Often in the books you feel there's a lot of in-depth abstract thinking going on that's quite challenging, experiential exercises that are also very challenging. But today I just wanted to give a little hint about these three facets and what they might mean for us and our way of being in the world. So one of the principles I see with these three facets is that you can readily see that they're actually necessary. Like without space, there's no, quote, room for anything to happen. And then things take place, so even events require space. Then time is obviously necessary, right? For existence, we need time, so we need space and we need time. From physics, we're used to that kind of notion, but we also need some kind of knowledge or knowingness. So these partners in experience seem very natural in that way. Now, what we start to understand is that we have relegated these factors to the background. So normally we're thinking in terms of objects, right? I'm relating to objects and things. I relate to myself as an object. I relate to my thoughts as objects. So these things are standing out in some kind of field, but we pay zero attention to the space surrounding these objects. And you say, well, why would we pay attention to the space surrounding the objects? Well, you could say, well, why don't you try paying attention to it and see what happens? And because it's curious, space it just functionally disappears, right? But if we start to think about it, there's always more space than object. And from the cosmic standpoint, of outer space, then there's huge amounts of more space than objects. But if we go microscopically to the level of atoms, the parts of the atom are also very, very tiny in relationship to the space that the, quote, atom occupies. So it seems that there are always vast amounts of space relative to objects, and that space is like the silent partner of all that exists or all that appears. And if we start to, there are many different exercises in the time, space, knowledge books, but if we just start to pay attention to the space around things, like it's a little exercise you can do. You just you notice that you lock onto the object, and then you just relax and open to the space around it. And then you notice that that's a new sort of object. So you can go by orders of magnitude, like I'm sitting in the room here, so I start to be aware of the space of the room. And then I realize that there's a limit there, which implies there's more space. So yes, there's the space of the building and where this room is. And then, okay, but that limit implies greater space, so then you open up farther, and there's the outdoors here at Ratnaling. Ratnaling's part of Sonoma County, part of California, the United States, the planet, etc. And you can keep opening frames of reference like that. And it just sets up an interesting flavor, It's relaxing in a way to pay attention to something that you've ignored in that way. So we can find a lot of different interesting things in there, but it's just to give attention to, and the Time, Space, and Knowledge books push it very far, that in fact you can't find an actual objects at any point. You can only find space and different kinds of levels or ways of looking at it called focal settings. But that takes a lot of investigation to even consider that seriously. But for now we can say, yeah, it would be worth it to be more attentive to space and like balance it, you know, and that would relax things a lot. So then the second facet is time, and with time there's a similar kind of ignoring in that, of course, we're constantly, we have clocks and we're saying things take time and I don't have enough time and what time is it? So time is part of our life, and we have the sense of the forward momentum that we're always being swept along somehow. But we treat time is like an abstract background. In other words, we're not paying attention to time, we're paying attention to what we consider events or transformations of objects that seem to, quote, require time. But time itself, just like space itself, we don't have any direct way to attend to it. So this again may be a kind of a mistake or a severe limitation. So there's many different practices in the TSK books that start to address this, where we start to just pay attention to the fact of our experience of time unfolding constantly with a past, present, and future structure. So just to bring that to the foreground, not like we're trying to overturn it or whatever, but bringing it to the foreground. Then when we do that and we start to notice that, then we become more aware of the fact that things always have this past, present, future shape, but we don't know the past or the future. You know, the past is relative to that present, the future is unknown, and we don't understand what's the transition, you know, because we have a concept like, well, there's this moment and then there's that moment. But if that's so, how big were those moments and how did they link and where did the transformation come or the transition come? So it sets up a lot of interesting, deeply experiential questions like that. And there's another interesting point, for me at least, about our relationship to time, which is that we feel like there are moments, and these moments have a carrying capacity. You know, so it's as if each moment of time was a little bucket or a little cup, and you want to try and fit what you can into it. And this is actually kind of anxiety-provoking, you know. So we're ignoring something that we do experience, which is the kind of personally experienced elasticity of time. That sometimes a lot fits into a very short time. And so our model of uniform little things, like we have the calendar laid out on the wall and we're walking through the calendar regular as clock time, is not reflective of the way we actually live or experience time. So there may be a lot of hidden depth there if we investigate time more directly. So now a little bit about knowledge. Here again, it's not, I think, so much that something's ignored, but that something is very much narrowed down. So knowledge is understood a little bit like facts and things that are the possession of a knower. So all of our knowing, at least the way we consciously use it, is appropriated by an owner, the self. So knowledge is not so much a property of a situation or something that has its own energy, but it's something that's acquired in very specific ways and attributed to an owner. And this is also severely limiting. So if we were to understand the way our life or experience unfolds as having to do with a play of space and time that is enjoyed or participated in by a knowledge that's kind of ever-present and shifts in possibilities, then things could be much more open, much more flexible. And Tarthang Tulku points to that. I'm going to read a little passage that's quoted in this book, which is an introduction to TSK vision called Inside Knowledge. And It's embedded in an article, so sorry, it's a little bit you have to get the context. He's been talking about waves and water. So the questioner, the interviewer here says, here again, our attitude about who or what is responding does make a difference. So is it me responding? Is it space, time, and knowledge responding? And Tarthang Tulku says, definitely, although it's not exactly an attitude that's involved. If we can see clearly that it's space, time, and knowledge that are involved rather than me, this has the immediate effect of freeing us from tensions, fears, and limiting habits. The one who's angry, sick, or due to confront some unpleasant, frightening situation is really space, time, and knowledge. Think for a minute about the problems you have in the course of a typical day. Try to imagine how you would face those problems if you knew that they were space and time presenting situations to knowledge itself rather than to you. And then the interviewer goes on to make some comments, but I'll just stop there. So it's the time-space knowledge vision offers a way of shifting our understanding so that things are really way more conducive to openness and change. And as Tarthang Tulku implied there, if we could see our problems, the presentation of our problems as being the play of space and time and apprehended by knowledge itself, then we would be free from a lot of emotionality and have many, many more options. So that's a little complex, but I hope it's intriguing for you, and maybe we'll do some videos about time, space, and knowledge coming soon too. So thank you.